On the Majority Report, on the phone, ladies and gentlemen, it is always a pleasure to welcome to the program Heather Parton, a writer for Salon. But hopefully, well, I don't know, hopefully, but I would imagine many of you know her as...
Are you ready for some Digby? Yeah. Are you ready for some Digby? Digby, yeah.
Hey, there you go. Digby from the blog Hullabaloo. Hello, Heather.
Hey, Sam. How are you?
I am well. I know you stayed up late last night to watch the debate. I know it's a little bit early to get up on the West Coast. I appreciate you joining us. Give me your just overall, just like top line. If you've got to write the headline, I wouldn't say for the Washington Post because it might be different than what you would write. But I mean, what would you say the top line is?
Well, okay, I'm not going to be a good Washington Post headline writer. I don't really understand how to do that. But I will say that from my perspective, as, you know, sort of a semi-activist writer, lefty, you know, of long-standing observer of politics, that, you know, this field that we have of the Democratic candidates for president is pretty impressive, certainly compared to what they're offering up on the other side and compared to what we saw in 2016 in the Republican primary. You know, these were pretty. It was a substantive debate, I think, more than they had been in the previously, and you know, I felt like I learned something, and that this is actually a pretty good process this time among the Democrats. Now, maybe I sound like some kind of a Pollyanna, but I feel like this is going okay, and I'm not one to be. I've never been one to say, you know, hey, everybody's got to get out of the way, and you know, everybody needs to quit. Whatever. It's only September. I think there's time, and I'm sure that we're going to see some dropouts very soon. But I got a lot out of it, to be honest. I didn't find it particularly boring. I thought that they were good, and it was good to see the front runners all together and kind of, you know, exchanging ideas with one another. So I mean, I think it's a pretty good reflection of where the Democratic Party is right now.
What was the stuff? I mean, I'm just curious as to, and you know, certainly I think I learned more about some of the specifics of plans. But what jumped out to you that you were like, I had no idea. I'm glad that I watched this debate. I heard that.
Well, I mean, I think that they gave, well, with the couple of exceptions, and we can talk about the front runner Joe Biden in a minute, but I think that they were pretty articulate about where their values are, what their belief system is. I mean, you know, you had this famous moment with Beto O'Rourke, which I thought was really excellent. I am always impressed when somebody sounds like a real person instead of a politician, and I felt like he did when he was talking about, you know, the guns and racism in America. But it was also just on the details. I mean, I felt like I got quite a bit out of Warren's discussion of of Medicare for All. Sanders, I thought, gave a really brilliant exposition about what he believes to be democratic socialism. And I know it's not new for him, but to do it in that particular venue and do it so well, I thought was really excellent. I'm sure there were people who saw that who went, wow, you know, that's interesting how he put that, and, you know, giving that a second thought that they may not have thought about before. You know, I felt that Amy Klobuchar, who is not my favorite candidate, she's a little bit more centrist than I am, but nonetheless, I think she gave a good rendition of what the centrist position is on a lot of these issues, particularly on Medicare for All. I think if you wanted somebody to articulate it, she did that position. I think she did it quite well. So, you know, it was just, you know, as they went, you know, even on foreign policy, you know, I mean, I was yearning for more foreign policy in the debate, and we got some questions. And about Afghanistan, it's pretty clear that, you know, where the Democratic Party is on that. Even Joe Biden, even Amy Klobuchar, you know, they're all saying that it's time to get out. Now, they have a different way of thinking about that than Donald Trump, but essentially I think we're in a place of consensus on that issue, which is new. I mean, that has not always been the case. So, you know, I felt that it was, you know, that there was a lot of substance there. You know, even, for instance, Kamala Harris's discussion about trade. I think what she said was kind of the sort of mainstream view that most Democrats probably would sign on to about trade, which is, I want to have a trade policy that lets us export our stuff, as she put it, not our jobs. That's sort of simple, but it's a reasonable way to explain that sort of thing. So, as I was watching, instead of usually, zoning out as I normally do in these things, I was interested in how they were articulating a lot of these ideas. And by the way, I'm sure you've pointed this out already. This party has moved. I mean, it is unrecognizable from where it would have been a decade ago in any kind of a debate like this. I mean, they have really moved, and I think for real. I mean, this is not, just some kind of positioning thing that, placate some faction in the party. I mean, this party has moved in our direction, let me put it that way, and it's quite impressive. I mean, it's been a long time coming. I mean, you and I both, we've been talking about this stuff for years. I mean, 20 years really, just kind of pushing. Come on, you got to get out of this post, Reagan, torpor that the party had been under, and let's move. I mean, let's become Democrats again. And I think it's happened. I mean, I was stunned by how far left some of these, issues were from people you wouldn't expect it from.
Right. I mean, I think that's true, and I think it's sort of. I think it's hard for people. We got a lot of young people in the office, and I think it's hard for young people to really appreciate. I'm not saying it's sufficient, but to appreciate the movement that has taken place. The idea that Biden is defensive, let's say, and even Klobuchar is defensive on some level as to their moderate posture, which relative to 10 years ago would have been the left. Right. I mean, short of like Kucinich on stage, someone like Klobuchar would be considered like she's sort of, sent, to the left of probably where everybody would be on stage on some level.
Absolutely.
And it's stunning. The other thing, and this has nothing to do with the debate, but Elizabeth Warren came out with her expansion of Social Security, which is a great proposal. It involves a donut hole, but the benefit increases are substantial across the board for everybody, but super substantial for people living in the lowest 25 percentile of income in terms of what it does in shoring up their retirement. I mean, it would literally take 10 million elderly folks out of poverty. Like right off the bat. And then Ron Wyden. And I maybe, I just remember Ron Wyden's Medicare proposal or whatever it was. Like, I can't even remember when that was, 5 years ago, 10 years ago or something, where it was just, people were like, you're undercutting everybody. Like, how could you do this? And the guy came out with a very robust expansion of Social Security. A whole idea of like basically getting rid of the preferential treatment that that capital gains get over payroll. I mean, and they're thinking, when a guy like Ron Wyden does it, he's not doing it because, he's running for president. He's doing it because he wants to be in on a conversation that is definitely going to happen. And you and I, were following the Social Security thing throughout the Obama years. We would talk. It seemed like every time that we would talk, we were talking about how Obama has been planning on cutting Social Security since day one. You would make that, you would cite the interview he gave in 2009, on and on and on. And then at one point, they gave up. And then the Senate basically voted on a non-binding resolution to, or the caucus did, to expand Social Security. And it appears that is an earnest, really genuine, earnest agenda item for the Democrats in the Senate.
It really does. And it's, let's talk about a popular kind of a popular program. I mean, this is the kind of thing. I mean, I think it's brilliant for Democrats to come out with this. I mean, you're talking about, first of all, the 10 million that you're talking about, probably more, when it gets right down to it, people who are, elderly people who are really living in poverty. And it's not like they can go out and, get a job or something. I mean, they're old and many of them are sick and they're living on virtually nothing. I mean, it is not enough money. I know some of these people, it's like, oh my God, they're dependent on a bunch of services anyway, which would be, alleviated by just basically giving them a fairly decent safety net income in their golden years. And on a political level, this makes sense because, there are a lot of poor elderly baby boomers out there, many of whom are probably dumbly voting for Republicans. Well, this is basically saying to them, hey, who's looking out for you here? It's not them, and it isn't them, because I can guarantee you, and they're already talking about it, if Donald Trump wins re-election, that they are going to go after entitlements again, or what they call entitlements. I hate that word. And they're already talking about it because the deficit will become a new issue. They are going to, especially if they win back the House, which doesn't look promising for them, but nonetheless, they're going to try to do it because they are going to be facing tremendous blowback from their rich donors over this deficit, and that is going to be the kind of thing that we're going to have a major battle for. So the best way and the best political way to go about this is to go ahead and put this into the campaign and let's have it out on that because I don't think Donald Trump has said. He says a lot of things, and this is one thing, I will never touch Social Security or Medicare. But, nobody believes a word that guy says anymore. And they've got people like, his cronies, Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell there. They're definitely talking about doing something with entitlements again. And, if the Democrats can get that into the campaign, it's politically smart because I think that it does show that people have always trusted Democrats on Social Security more than they trust Republicans, and for good reasons, because Republicans have been trying to repeal it since the day it was enacted. So they have a lot to go for. And I think that, that's the kind of thing. We've been down this road. That fight's been had over and over and over again. And the smartest thing the Democrats did was take the tack, hey, we're not going to be fighting this defensive war anymore. Social Security is inadequate. We're going to start talking about expanding it. And I think that happened right during or perhaps right after that assault on the program in 2005, right after the election, George Bush's re-election, and they went hard after it. And you remember that battle.
Yep.
And I think that wisely the Democrats and the activists on that issue decided, hey, we're not going to be defensive on this anymore. It's time to go the other direction. And I think that's starting to pay off.
Yep. Well, I remember just like how absurd the idea was considered, and folks can go over to Atrios's blog he still, I think, he had written a couple of USA Today opinion pieces, I think, at one point that really set some people off on that. But
that's right.
But all right, so let's turn back to the debate.